I went to the California Cryobank's website to buy sperm. At first, the sperm was for me. I was single and a lesbian and wanted to have a baby. I looked for healthy sperm, smart sperm, tall and athletic sperm, sperm that loved its mother. I settled on donor number 3342 because he was 6'2", played baseball in college, and said on his audio interview that he loved his mother. To reduce anxiety and to assure that my top pick would be available when I was ready, I bought 10 vials at $250 each. As long as I paid the $140 annual storage fee, my sperm would be there for me, waiting at the cryobank on very sophisticated ice. I got pregnant on my second try. As soon as Tashi was born, I wanted another baby. But I hated pregnancy and delivery. And unlike most women who experience postpartum amnesia, I remembered the hormonal despair and the vaginal stitches. I would never get pregnant again. But I could get another woman pregnant. I had sperm. This is when I began my search for a young wife. I wanted to sow my seeds. I went online again, this time to Match.com, and this is what I wrote in my profile. I'm looking for someone who loves children. I want her to have big boobs. A pretty face is nice too. Studies show that men, or people with sperm, are more attracted to women with large breasts and wide hips because large breasts give the illusion of more milk to feed our young, and wide hips suggest greater ease in bearing our children. Scientists have discovered that the higher the body's waist-hip ratio, or what is medically known as the WHR, the more attractive the woman. Marilyn Monroe, for example, had a 0.7 WHR, meaning her waist was 70% smaller than her hips. Salma Hayek and Venus de Milo also have very high waist-hip ratios. I didn't know any of this at the time, but I'd find myself walking along Lincoln Road where I'd notice a woman between the ages of 15 and 35 spilling out of the top of her dress. She'd pass and I'd turn to leer at her ass. If it was big, I'd have an uncontrollable urge to club her over the head and drag her to my fertility cave. I wasn't objectifying women. I wanted tits and ass for good reason. In a month and a half on Match.com, only 2 women responded to my profile. First, I got a date with a woman who compared herself to Raquel Welch. She didn't say she was the same age as Raquel. She was postmenopausal. My second date was so skinny, I don't think she could menstruate. I didn't get it. Why weren't the women lining up? Couldn't they sense my virility? Finally, Victoria responded to my profile. She thought it was funny. She has a 0.75 WHR. And I fell in love with her. A year later, Victoria and I were in Dr. Bustillo's office. The doctor checked Victoria's follicles on the sonogram, and they looked ripe. 22 millimeters, just what the doctor ordered. She was ready to ovulate. The doctor sent us out into the waiting room to wait for my sperm to defrost. Victoria and I had been waiting an hour and 20 minutes when Victoria said, "Please don't scream when they call my name." I saw her point. This wasn't bingo. But I had been waiting years for this. I was a little antsy, and I was getting excited. The door opened, and a nurse stuck her head out. "Victoria." I jumped up, my hands flew into the air, and I let out a little squeal. We followed the nurse behind the double doors and into exam room C. Victoria was instructed to take off her clothes from the waist down and lie on the table with her feet in the stirrups. Victoria covered herself with a paper sheet, and we waited. Victoria didn't say anything. On the outside, she was cool and totally poised, like the banker she is. But her cuticles were cracked, so I knew she was nervous. I held her hand. She let me. The nurse came in and showed Victoria the vial of my sperm. She gave us the sperm stats, fast and abundant. Victoria confirmed the number, 3342. The nurse told Victoria what she was going to do and then opened Victoria's vagina with a speculum. She moved over to let me take a look inside. The nurse explained that the cervix is the ball of the base of the uterus, the part of the body that gets swabbed in a pap smear. Victoria's cervix looked like a giant pink gumball. The nurse told us there were 2 holes like doors into the uterus, called the os. I could see Victoria's hole wide and clear. I said, "Baby, you have a big os." The nurse put the catheter into the hole, but it wouldn't go all the way through. The nurse said the os was a strong muscle. Victoria's was resisting. I said, "Baby, you have a tight os." Finally, the nurse got the catheter all the way in. I asked if I could inseminate, but before the nurse answered, Victoria said, "I don't think you can do that." I felt cock-blocked. My moment was now, and the woman I loved, my woman with childbearing hips, was thwarting my destiny. Was she trying to follow the rules, which is her nature? Did I embarrass her, which I sometimes do? Was she afraid I'd spill my seed? There was no time to ask. I wanted to beg, but begging, I knew, was self-sabotage and not sexy. I had to play this right, so I caught Victoria's eye and mouthed, "Trust me." The nurse drew up the sperm into a syringe and attached it to the catheter. She looked up at Victoria, and with no judgment in her voice, she said, "It's up to you." Victoria said, "Oh, okay." I smiled, but I didn't let myself cheer. The nurse instructed me to stand between Victoria's legs. She said, "When you're ready, push very slowly." I held the syringe steady with my first 2 fingers, like a cigarette. I looked at Victoria and mouthed again, "Thank you." Then slowly, very slowly, I pressed the plunger.